Morning, Keaton. How are you doing today?
I'm having a great day. How about yourself?
You know what? I am actually having a pretty good day too. Had an important closing a couple days ago. Big weight off my shoulders. Pretty happy that that went through finally.
What happened? I know you were seemed a little stressed last week. So
We had a situation with a listing sale that I worked with on the sales side. My clients were the sellers, and this would happened. We had gotten an accepted offer a few months back, actually, quite a while ago, and we had negotiated a pretty good number on it for current market sale price, and we had fairly long closing, which depending on the property type is not out of the ordinary. So this one we had closing about 5 months later, and closing was supposed to be in August, but as we were getting closer to it, I was reaching out to the buyer's agent. How are we looking? What's going on? And for clarity, these folks, these buyers, had removed all subjects. They had completely firmed up the deal, and they had submitted their deposit. As we got closer to the date of completion, though, it seemed like things started getting a little bit shakier. They were asking to be able to come back and take another look at the property because they potentially had to add folks to the contract of purchase and sale. So by the end of it, they needed to order another appraisal, and of course, by that time, the market had gone down about 20%. So the buyer was then on the hook to come up with an extra $200,000 in order to facilitate the closing of this transaction. So they came back to us and basically said, well, at this point, we can't close. So my sellers were in a pretty difficult situation. And the reason being that when you have a sale that's not going to complete for one reason or the other, you have the option to either put it back on the market or go after the buyer that is failing to complete. That kind of puts them in between a rock and a hard place. And the reason is that the market had gone down so much that even if we were to put it back on market and sell, they're not going to recoup their costs. So their option then is to go back to the seller and sue them for the damages, not only the difference between—
you mean the buyer?
Excuse me, the buyer. Yes. Go back to the buyer and sue them for the difference of the damages. So the difference between what that original accepted offer was and what they were then finally able to resell it for, which, in today's market could have been $300,000 plus.
Over the last 8 years, I've seen it happen a few times, and it's usually a lose, lose, lose.
It's not a fun situation to be in. And the problem with suing anyone, as a lot of people know, we have a legal system and not a justice system. It's very slow and it's very expensive. So it could potentially have taken them years and years to get their money back, if at all. And a lot of that would have been eaten up in legal fees. So that's the rock. The hard place was the option of potentially reducing the purchase price in order to facilitate the transaction and help this buyer close with what he was able to, pull a bunch of favors, go to private lending. He was really taking every last coin out of the couch cushions in order to move forwards, in order to avoid litigation, as he absolutely needed to. But what we ended up doing, actually, it was a long negotiation process, but we ended up actually getting the buyer to agree to a vendor take back mortgage for the balance of the purchase price that he was not able to close on. So it's kind of a unique strategy that we use. So the bulk of the mortgage was supplied by a private lender at whatever rate he happened to get. And then the difference, we came back and said, well, look, you still owe us that money. That's not changing. We're just going to help facilitate the close of this, help you get your mortgage on it. But within a certain period of time, we want the balance of the funds that you promised us you would pay back. So we did that by way of a vendor take back mortgage, which
it sounds like all those hours we spent in the weeknights drinking coffee at real estate investing events over the last few years have paid off, eh?
Yeah, it's nice having those tools in your back pocket just in case.
But maybe let's just explain, what is a vendor take back?
Well, so in this situation, the sellers didn't need that lump of funds, that particular amount of money right away. They were not going to use that money to buy a new house. It was retirement money. So they were in a situation where they could lend the difference to that buyer for a certain period of time at a certain interest rate. And as interest rates continue to go up, that's going to be a more viable option for purchasers to request vendor take back mortgage from sellers that don't need those funds right away, because it's a lot easier for a seller to give assurances on financing than a lot of lenders, given that they're far more restrictive these days on their qualifications.
So I'll add something quick here, just for anyone watching. If you own investment properties, you can actually use a vendor take back mortgage to defer your capital gains over up to, I believe it's a 5-year window. Now, I'm not an accountant, so talk to your accountant about this, but there's actually some really cool things you can do with these strategies, particularly on investment properties, not only to help you sell a property that's not moving, but to get some tax benefits as well, and maybe earn some interest income.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's awesome. I mean, obviously, this was a very difficult situation. We did our best to try to fix it as best that we could. Like you said, it was kind of a lose-lose, but I think that we muddled our way through it as best that we could and avoided everyone going to court for years. And
Nobody wins in a shootout, right?
exactly. But we all walked away. So, I think that was the best outcome. But what's interesting now that we're getting into these slower markets is that strategies like vendor take back mortgages are becoming viable again. So it's not something that somebody should sleep on. If if you're looking into getting investment properties or residential properties, it's definitely a tool that you should be aware of. And if you're working with a mortgage professional and a real estate professional, work with folks that know how to use these tools.
Well, the thing that amuses me, I've known you for years and I know how you operate, and we've gone through a lot of training together. I also work with a lot of other realtors, and it's interesting to see. I know the public perceptions often is a realtor is a realtor is a realtor, but I've seen these situations happen before. And if there's not calm parties on both sides that know what they're doing, it often just results in lawyers and everybody loses except for the lawyers. So it's very interesting to see that you're able to come in and use the expertise and the experience you have to provide another solution that I think we could both agree that many old school realtors would never even consider. Many managing brokers would probably shy away from, because it's not clean and simple. It's a compromise at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Instead of just saying, I'm right, you're wrong, you lose, which ultimately leads to everybody losing, you're able to come up with a compromise that probably no one's happy, but at the end of the day, it's the best possible outcome.
Yeah, the lesser of two evils for sure. And it was even talking to my sellers about it, getting them to understand that yes, your money is going to be delayed. You're not going to get it right away, but it's either delayed or not at all. So it was a difficult situation, but like I said, we muddled our way through it. We ended up getting pulled some level of success out of the jaws of defeat, I would say. And heaven forbid that we have to deal with too many of these going forwards. But it's going to be a more common occurrence as the market continues to slow down, and we have appraisals coming through that are lower than the accepted offer price, and especially because lenders seem to be sending appraisers out so much further past subject removal and closer to completion. I mean, that delta between where that accepted offer value is and then the current market value at appraisal time keeps getting bigger. And it's going to be an issue going forwards if we continue to have these long timelines on appraisals.
Yeah, one of the things we do for our clients is we order appraisals as early as possible. Now, there were periods of time a couple of years ago where we'd actually delay on appraisals. But what we do is we look at the market and the trends going on, and then we decide when we're going to order the appraisal to optimize the result for our clients. And right now, we're often ordering appraisals before offers are even fully accepted. So it's in queue, it's getting a space, we're getting everything lined up so that things can just be very tidy. Mm-hmm. And ultimately it minimizes risk. Now, are you seeing similar trends of pre-sales? Because I know there's a few strategies we do to set value on a pre-sale years before it completes and to make sure financing is guaranteed. But I also know that most financing experts don't do it because it's extra work for no pay. So what are you seeing on the pre-sale side?
Well, on my clients, I'm always going to make sure that they're not having to get requalified 2 years down the road. I think that's just, prudent, as you know, or as you just said, sending out appraisals as early as possible, nipping it in the bud so we don't have headache down the road. So yeah, my clients are covered, but I am starting to hear of a lot of pre-sale units coming back on the market. Which means that those buyers are not able to qualify. that puts them at risk of not only losing their deposits, but also litigation in the case of a developer that can't get the same amount of money. What a lot of people think that, I go and get a pre-sale, and if I don't complete on it, well, I lose my 10%, 15% deposit, and that sucks, but that's the end of it. That potentially isn't the end of it.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah. You are potentially signing yourself up for a lot of headache, because if that developer cannot sell the unit for the same amount of money that you agreed to pay for it, you would potentially be on the hook for the difference of what they could sell it for. So,
Sure.
Regardless of whether or not you plan to complete on something, you need to know the rules of the game that you're playing. And I think a lot of people are getting a bit of a wake up call today about the rules of what they're getting involved in, and it's going to get. I think it's going to get interesting for a lot of buyers. They're being put into situations that they're not prepared for. It presents an opportunity for other buyers that are better prepared, but overall, it's too bad to see this happening.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are learning about assignment fees. They're learning that the developer has to consent to the assignment. And often if there's unsold projects in a different phase, they won't allow it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just so everyone
Which
knows.
makes sense. If I have a store and let's say I sell a shirt, I still have 3 shirts left to sell. I'm not going to let that buyer come back and try to sell that shirt in my store. All right.
Yeah,
It's
certainly not. Especially not for less
there's
than you want to sell the others for.
exactly. So there's no, it's not malicious on developers' part. There's simply no altruism in business, and they have to protect their bottom line. And, if they don't need to allow somebody to assign it while they are still trying to sell, it makes sense from a financial angle. So, but it's surprising how many buyers I connect with after the fact that didn't work with me on the purchase of the pre-sale, and bringing them up to speed on all this sort of stuff is really eye opening for them.
The sales
And,
guy at the sales center didn't tell me this.
no. Yeah, it's when you're
It's okay.
going
My
in
lawyer
and
said I can sue him. No, actually, you can't.
exactly. Yeah.
He's not the
It
realtor.
turns out that the developer doesn't actually owe you a duty of care, of full disclosure. So if you're not, thoroughly reading that contract or working with a professional that knows what they're doing, you might be missing out on some stuff. So
I'll just summarize. If you're ever looking at a pre-sale, you can actually get financing guaranteed up to 3 years in advance. And you can actually get, often buyers will say, well, the unit wasn't built. We couldn't do the financing. You can actually get appraisals done by floor plan. So the appraiser will take the blueprints and they'll look at comparable sales and the specs, and they will set a value, and you can have your financing guaranteed up to 3 years in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And these programs have survived 2008. They've survived when prices dropped in 2018, when oil receded in 2014. So they're relatively durable programs by the big banks, and these are with major banks. So this is not some B lender fee-based. It's a free option that you can do as a worst case scenario. And if you don't like the option when the time comes to close, you just go to a different bank or a different option.
Mm-hmm.
And often these programs set a worst case rate for you, or they offer their best rates at the time, whichever are better. So it's a win-win, and there's no real drawback. You don't even have to pay for the appraisal yourself. The bank does.
I couldn't see somebody opting out of it. At least you've got a safety net. Very worst case scenario, you've got a safety net. And when it comes closer, if the market situation has improved or rates have improved, well, hey, you're sitting pretty. You're in a good place. But why leave that up to chance? I don't see that as a winning strategy.
Well, I have to go call some banks and chase some approvals today, but it's an interesting one. It's like trying to run uphill into the wind right now for some things. But it's been a pleasure chatting.
Absolutely. I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you again.
I'm glad it worked out. I don't want you to go gray like I am. So
yeah, me too. Fewer gray hairs. Let's hold that off as long as possible.
It's coming, buddy. Have a good one.
Cheers.